Welcome everyone to another interview here on Learn, Grow, Invest. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with the Managing Director of Omni Industries, who has an offer on the market now in their initial public offer. So we're going to talk about the details in a second. And we'll also meet with the lead broker, which is NCB Capital Markets, going through just some of the questions we have coming out of our prospectus review. So we'll talk to both teams and just get all of our questions answered about this IPO and see if we can help you to answer the questions that you have as well. So we welcome you to post those in the chat as we go through. I'm going to do a quick overview of the offer just in case this is the first time you're hearing about it. So we have 500 million shares available for participation. 120 million available to the public pool, 234 million for the reserved pool for key partners. Then we have 125 million for NCB, which is a lead broker, and 20 million for the employee reserve pool. So just some key dates for you. The opening date is tomorrow. That's May 17th. And so, of course, with it being an IPO, the recommendation is that if you're interested to apply, and we'll go through the details as to how we can do that to apply as soon as possible. Minimum subscription is 1,000 units. It's $1 per share. And then, of course, once the offer closes, you'll have the basis of allotment that's announced, refunds issued if applicable, and listing should follow shortly after. In terms of the use of proceeds, it's mentioned 3 key things here, well, 4 really. To upgrade existing machines. So we're going to talk about what that means, to purchase additional machines. And of course, these being generalizations, we're going to dig into what that means, how that impacts their company, and to permanently inject additional working capital. So we're going to ask them, how they're going to use that capital and what it will mean. And then of course, for all offers that are listed, there needs to be fees covered, which is usually through the offer. So point 4 is pretty standard. And then, of course, they've mentioned things like their dividend policy, etc. So we're going to go into all of the details on the questions that we had coming out of the prospectus review and just try to understand a bit more about the company. So I'll ask you to join me in welcoming Patrick Kumst and Alex Johnson from NCB Capital Markets. Welcome.
Hi, Jermaine. Thank you for having us on board.
Thanks, Jermaine.
Thank you so much for joining me. All right, so Patrick, I think we'll start with you. Tell us just a little bit about Omni. So you've done other interviews before, I'm sure, but just give us, I'd say, a practical understanding of the business, products you offer, and the clients you serve.
All right. Well, Omni started 50 years ago by my father, and in the Crossroads area, and we have grown and outgrown our facility in Crossroads many years ago. And in 2001, we took over the assets of Thermoplastics here in Spanish Town, and our current product range is quite diverse. We supply 3 separate and distinct market segments, with both manufacturing products as well as traded products. So one of the distinct market segments that we supply products to, and that represents about 51% of our total sales, is anything to do with the construction industry. And by that I mean PVC pipe and fittings. We manufacture aluminum zinc sheeting for roofing. We trade in gate valves and manhole frame and covers, and basically anything that a developer wants to build a home or to build a housing development, they would basically come to Omni first, because all of their infrastructure needs, not cement or lumber, but all of their plumbing infrastructure needs would be accessible through us. Along that same sector, we distribute throughout Jamaica to all the hardware stores. So we supply pipe and fittings to the hardware stores. We sell toilets, we sell doors, we sell nails. So things of that nature, construction related, safety helmets, construction buckets, which we actually make the buckets here. So that gives you an impression as to one segment that Omni supplies products to. The other segment is industrial packaging. And by that, I mean crates for the beverage industries, crates for the food industry, crates, buckets for the food and paint industry. Um, and so that's industrial packaging. And then we have a third market segment that we supply items to hardware stores or haberdasheries. And that is your plastic houseware items. And the plastic houseware items would include things like your baby bath, your flower pot, a garden hose. You know, that's one of the original products that the company started with. A product that is in everybody's household is a laundry tub. So, you know, that just gives you a brief synopsis as to the market segments that we are in and the product ranges that we offer to those three market segments.
Okay, right. Thanks for that overview. So I'll ask you. Well, no, you did it already. So I mean that should. Well, no. Let me still ask you. So I wanted to say, what would you say? Because the way that I think about it, right? Because I'm already thinking of some stores that I may or may not have seen your products in. Can you name some of the distributors or maybe retailers that we may see your products in, just so that persons can fully appreciate the fact that they may have seen you before but just not know it?
All right. Well, classical case is Azan Supercenter downtown. You know, we supply them with laundry tubs. Um, you know, if you turn it over the bottom, you'll see "Made in Jamaica" by Omni. But most people are not curious about that. Discount Lumber and Hardware up in Ligony. I mean, I'm just speaking about ones that are closer to home. You know, we really distribute throughout all parishes, all cities in Jamaica. Um, you know, we supply products to island dairies, but that's not, a retailer wouldn't necessarily go there. Um, you know, I'm trying to think of other, Phil's Hardware, one of our largest hardware stores. So you'll see our products in Phil's Hardware.
Okay, yeah. I just wanted that breakdown, just to just to just for the average person to appreciate where they might have seen you, right? All right. So what would you say is your strategy for growth, right? So we've seen, the last 5 years in terms of your numbers, 2 billion in revenue seems to be a constant for you, right? What's the strategy for growth? Because you've been around a long time. The question may be, have you reached that stage of maximum growth, or do you still see that opportunity? And how do you plan to really bring that about?
Oh, well, there's definitely opportunity for growth. And that's actually one of the main reasons why we are taking this route with the IPO. But in terms of strategies that we're looking at, you know, we're talking about product diversification. So I want to add, or I'm saying I as in Omni, but we want to add additional product lines to our existing range, and that would service industries, again, still with the hardware and haberdashery stores. Some of the products that I've mentioned in previous interviews, and I'll just touch on them again, is a bread crate. That item is only imported in Jamaica. It's not available locally. We are going to be making that in short order. We're looking at plastic chairs for the entertainment and party industry. Again, these are items not made in Jamaica, only imported. So when we target items like that, there is growth opportunities that are here, and it does require cash to grow. And hence, here we are. So that was diversification. We talk about product development. Well, diversification and product development sort of go hand in hand. We want to penetrate new markets, not only with existing products, but with new products as well. We have a strategy to expand overseas with looking at markets like Guyana, and specifically with beverage crates, looking at markets like Barbados, again with beverage crates. So there is opportunity to grow, and using varying strategies, it's achievable for sure.
Okay. So what would you say would be, so the term competitive differentiation, what would you say that is for you? And again, just you don't necessarily have to name competitors, right? Because I don't necessarily want you to give them a plug, right? But what would you say kind of separates Omni? Again, the longevity is there, sure, but what would you say makes you stand out from your competition?
Of course. Well, plastics is a commodity item. There's nothing fancy about it. It's not pretty. It's not attractive. But I can tell you what makes us stand out above our competitors is 100% our people. We have a dedicated staff here, about 110 members who are hardworking, dedicated, and are committed to give service to our customers. And I emphasize the point on service because that's our mantra. We believe in service over everything else. My sales director, Vincent Clark, he tells me he never turns his phone off. He will get a call at 11 o'clock at night from the National Water Commission. They have a problem and a broken main somewhere. We rouse somebody up out of their bed, open our warehouse, and make sure that the product can be delivered to the Water Commission so that they can, plug their emergency. Service, service, service. I can't reiterate that enough. When a customer places an order, within 24 hours, they get delivery. It doesn't matter where in the island they are. It could be as far as Westmoreland. Within 24 hours, we will deliver. That is what separates Omni from the competition.
Okay, I would, so some thoughts there. Talk to me a little bit more about your team. So you mentioned over 110. In terms of locations, how diverse are the different locations that you work from, and do you intend to have any locations overseas anytime soon?
Okay, we currently have one location in Twickenham Park, Spanish Town, and that is the only location that we operate from. At this point in time, we do not have any plans to open up another facility in another parish or something like that. We have a fleet of trucks that can deliver within 24 hours. So we don't really see the value of having another location, say, for example, Montego Bay. If we can get products down there within 24 hours, why bother with the overheads and the additional expenses, things of that nature? You're asking about, would we set up a facility overseas? The quick answer to that is it's not in our plans. And the reason for that is we are a 100% Jamaican company. We prefer to keep the employment here locally. We prefer to keep the profits locally and to reinvest in our country.
Okay. I was thinking about it more from a convenience perspective, but I know with the toll and other things, it's really easy to get delivery really to anywhere in the island within 24 hours, especially if you, because I did see mention, I believe, about an online ordering system. So was that system meant for your B2B or your B2C clients primarily?
It's primarily meant for B2B. We really don't have a B2C clientele, but with the online platform, the idea is to really reach a broader array of customers. And it's also intended for customers to be able to reach us in another avenue that's easy. We have sales reps that are assigned, geographic territories in Jamaica, and they visit them, but if a week goes by and the sales rep has not, stopped in for a visit, they can use our website and, get a request for quote, place an order. It's just another avenue to make it easy and convenient for customers to put their orders through the system. Again, it's part of the enhanced service package that we're offering.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to talk a bit now about the use of proceeds. So Alex, I don't know if you want to maybe chime in here, or give Patrick a few moments to catch his breath after all of those questions. So I see a couple of things here in terms of upgrading existing machines, um, purchasing additional machines, and adding to working capital. Can we get a little bit more details as to what that looks like? Is the machines, for example, that are being replaced, are they down now? Is it that it's just about maybe increasing capacity or getting new features? I'm not really that versed on how things work on the manufacturing side, so I'm hoping to get some context there.
Okay, no worries. So good evening again to you and your listeners. Before I go into the question, I'd just like to thank Patrick and the Omni team for believing in NCB Capital Markets to bring in the first IPO for 2024. We believe that Omni is a very strong company, and we are very excited about this transaction. Now, in terms of the questions, and I mean, Patrick could be a little more specific in terms of the use of the machinery. So essentially, the use of the proceeds would be to retool some of the existing machines, to purchase new machines, to provide working capital support for Omni, and also to cover the fees that are associated with the IPO. So, I mean, Omni, I think, is on its second growth phase in terms of where it's going, and you'll hear Patrick talk a little bit about his expansion plans into the different Caribbean territories and also into different products, such as motor oil buckets, plastic chairs, and so forth. So I think in terms of the use of the proceeds, it's to do productive things in the company, ensuring that the machines are up to date. It would reduce the level of downtime and servicing that they currently experience, and also to improve the capacity. I think for one of the machine that does the crates, it currently produce X, I don't want to say the specific number, but it produces X amount of crates now, and the new machine should double that in terms of the amount of crates. So stuff like that, all the proceeds would be used for productive reasons.
Okay, I love specifics. So Patrick, I don't know if you can add just a little bit more color to that. I'd love to know, because I think that's just an important point, because all of this points to your revenue projections, which mention 10% growth on existing revenue. So for the machines that you are replacing, is it that they're down now? Is it that it's just an increased capacity issue? And the new ones that you're looking to add, what new products or services you're hoping to do with them, or it's simply just more diversity in terms of what you can use?
All right, Jeremy, I'll give you a little Easter egg. Our plans for growth is really twofold, or a three-pronged approach. We're going to be replacing existing injection molding machines. We have, some of our units here are dated back from 1984. They're German machines, they're DMAGs. And, anybody in the plastics industry, and I'll share it with you, knows that a DMAG or any German machine is the Rolls Royce of the Rolls Royce. It'll never die. It'll run till kingdom come. However, with changing technologies, the motors that run the machines and the servos and stuff like that, the more modern ones are more energy efficient. So to answer your question about machines that we have down, we have no machines that are down. They're all in full capacity, but the ones that are aging, we are going to cycle them out and replace them with more energy efficient equipment. And then, of course, another part of the proceeds is to add existing capacity to what we have now. So we are actually going to be installing 2 to 3 new machines in the next year to year and a half. We actually started this program 2 years ago, and we acquired 3 pieces of equipment that were really replacements. And the ones that are coming that I just mentioned a while ago are going to be adding new capacities. And the third pronged approach that I mentioned a while ago is that the tooling that we use to make a bucket or a crate, that tooling has a useful lifespan of, say, 1 million shots, meaning 1 million times that it opens and closes. And then, like anything, it wears down and it's becomes at the end of its useful life. So we have some of those tooling that is becoming at the end of their useful life. So it is our intention to replace them so that we continue offering the same quality products to our customers currently. And then we're also going to be adding new tooling, which would allow us to add new products to the marketplace.
Okay. So I just thought of this question. Is space ever going to be an issue for you? Because you mentioned, all these new equipment. I imagine it may take up some space. You have this large team. Will you, if you grew, let's say maybe 10x or 20x from where you are right now, would you ever need more space, or you have enough already to take you well into the future?
Currently, we have sufficient space to add, I would say, almost to double our production capacity. If we were to grow 20 times where we were today, then most definitely we would be looking at another facility, or at least a second warehousing facility. From a production point of view, we can certainly manage that level of growth. From a warehousing point of view, we would need additional space. But again, that's if we're growing 20 times our current, growth levels. Between now and 5 years' time, we are perfect where we are. We have sufficient space.
Okay. All right. So I realized earlier today that there was an addendum release. I have 3 questions about your financial performance, but I wanted to address the issue of the addendum. I haven't been able to go through it in full, so I don't know, Alex or yourself, Patrick, who may want to comment on what might have been changed and, what we should glean from that.
Yeah, definitely, I could. So I think it was last night the addendum was uploaded, so it was brought to our attention, and also through research we found that there were some errors in the financial statement, specifically as it relates to the quarter end and the ratios, not the audited numbers. I need to make that distinction. So the reality is, in some school of thought, there is a particular formula that they use to calculate certain ratios. So, for example, debt ratios, some persons would use total liabilities, sorry, but others would use the debt itself. So, in the prospectus, that was an issue. So, we decided to be more specific with the calculation by just stripping out the other liabilities out of the calculation so that it's specific towards debt. So like the debt ratio, which is debt divided by assets, debt to equity ratio, which is debt divided by total equity, those were amended, and the results would have been better or improved compared to what was presented in the prospectus.
That was going to be my question, right? What does it materially change, if any? So I have it here on my screen just to show persons what it looks like, and we'll put the link in the description for persons to go through. So Alex, what would it change, if any? You mentioned the debt calculation, so I understand that definitely. And you said it's primarily centered around the Q1 2024 results and not the audited.
Correct. And the ratios as well. Some of the ratios, like debt to equity ratio, the ROE was one as well, where the labeling said after tax, but the formula was picking up before tax, so that was amended as well.
So everything pretty much in blue is changed.
I heard that echo. Could you repeat?
Everything in blue is what was changed?
Correct. Everything in blue would have been what was amended.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
And then for the Q1, Yeah, I just wanted to say, and for the Q1 cash flow statements as well, the original report had about 11 million in operating flows. There was some improvement to that as well. So the operating flows improved to $12 million. And then we just included the notes to the financial statements that would have been amended as well.
Okay.
And we ensured that we did the full round in terms of going to the FST and the JSC, going back to the company and the CFO, and just ensuring that the numbers are tight and accurately reflect where the company is.
Okay, cool. So I wanted to get that in because we're going to ask some financial questions now. Just in case, we just wanted to touch on that. So
Definitely.
I have three questions for you, Patrick, or you can take them as well, Alex, if you're prepared to. So first, I saw projections for growth, and I see Omar kind of alluding to it here, where we've seen companies come to market with financial projections, but significantly fall short so far. What guarantees do potential investors have in Omni to meet and exceed those numbers? So I'm not even going to speak to anybody who would have had projections in the past or anything like that. Whenever there is a specific commitment or promise, my personal assumption is that it's going to be a conservative projection, meaning you probably personally expect to go more, but you're going to say 10 because that's reasonable based on what you see in terms of pipeline. So what can you speak to in terms of commitment, assuming that everything goes as planned for the IPO and your projections for growth? How confident are you in that 10% that you've projected in terms of revenue growth?
All right, let me see if I can just answer some of those questions. And I think it's important to also, let the listeners know and the investing public know that while we have calculated conservative numbers of, 10% growth, I think it's important to point out that with the expansions that we're planning to do and the new products that we're coming online, most of those won't come to fruition until, I would say, sometime in the fourth quarter of the year. And the reason for that is that by the time you place an order for a piece of equipment or tooling, it takes 3 months for manufacturers to put it together, another 1 month to be shipped to Jamaica because most of it is coming out of Europe. And so, you're talking considerable lead times before, equipment can be commissioned and stuff like that. So I don't want people to get the false impression that you invest tomorrow and, a week later we're at that 10% growth. It's not, we'll get there, but I just want that to make that distinction. But again, as I mentioned earlier, we have calculated growth conservatively. And if you look at our, historical records in the last 5 years, with the exception of 2022, 23, they were pretty much the same. You could see that we have, met those targets before. So we're very confident in that growth plan.
Okay, so I do appreciate that response because that is where my mind goes to as well, because I've sat here in this same chair, interviewed multiple CEOs. We talk about projections, and I think there's usually you're the first CEO, I think, to really lay it out that there is a process, right? It's not we get the funds today, we have the machines by next week, or 10% by June, right? So I appreciate that. So now I'm factoring that into your projections as well. That I'm assuming that you think you can achieve that growth on the tail end of the year, and most of it may even be without the new equipment, right? Or is it that you're saying it's 2025 that we're going to see this growth and not necessarily 2024?
Well, we expect to see the growth in 2025 as well, that's for sure. But what makes us very confident about our growth this year, even without the new equipment and additional product lines, is the fact that the construction industry is booming in Jamaica. That is not slowing down for now. There is a huge demand for housing, particularly in the low-income market. There are exciting projects coming on the line, including Pinnacle in Montego Bay, Spanish Town Hospital, developers like Buildright and Chemtech, they're developing hundreds of acres of land for housing solutions. Draxhall is another classical point. All of these developers, of course, have Omni products under the ground. You know, the homes are built on top of us, so to speak. So, so they'll have a good foundation. But so that really gives us confidence that even without the input of the additional capacities and stuff like that, we will meet the target.
Okay.
And if I could add, Jermaine, if you look at the Q1 numbers in the income statement, you'll see where for Q1 2023, the top line revenue was 599 million. And for Q1 2024, it was 606 million. So that is already showing that there has been improvement based on the start of the year without even having the proceeds from the IPO. And I mean, when you annualize that 606 million, you'll get about 2.4 billion in revenue. For last year, it was 2 billion thereabouts. So, I mean, we've been seeing some improvement when you compare apples to apples in terms of quarter over quarter, quarter to quarter, sorry, in terms of the revenue. So, and then, sorry, go ahead.
No, man, I was gonna say that did come up through the prospectus review, and what I wondered, and somebody asked it from our community, are all quarters the same? Meaning, do you have some companies have cycles, right? So it may be, you know, their third quarter is the best, or the fourth quarter. So Patrick, do you have those kind of cycles, or is it that you have, you know, relatively the same? Or maybe I'll ask you it this way: which is your best quarter, and which is usually your worst quarter? And worst doesn't necessarily mean bad performance, but probably the lowest in terms of numbers.
You need to choose that word carefully, you know. You know, in any industry, there's business cyclicality. And if we were to look at, and of course, because we are in 3 different market segments, the cyclicality, I would say, impacts Omni a lot less than it would other companies who are solely focused in one industry. So what I'm saying by that is, for, you know, to give you an example, the construction industry in December normally closes down, I would say, almost for a month. You know, by the 15th of December, most projects are winding down. They close for the holidays, and they actually don't pick back up until mid-January. So we will see, you know, a reduction from the construction sector. However, in that same breath, the food distribution sector in September, when it comes to, you know, back to school, and, you know, our customers wanting to get product out to their to the institutions like that, you know, there's an increase. And so again, you know, I'm saying that to say that, you know, when one market is up and the other one is down, Omni is right there, you know, surfing the waves of both, to use that parable. Another case in point is the months of October and November. Consumers love to fix up their homes for Christmas. So there is a high demand for buckets for the paint industry, for argument's sake. So, you know, it's hard to say definitive to say, okay, well, this quarter is good and that quarter is good, because, you know, pretty much overall we have consistent sales. It's only when you break it down to market segments, you know, okay, well, it's slowing down because it's Christmas, or it's increasing because, you know, it's a back to school period, or, you know, over the Independence weekend, for a classical point. That's when beverage companies put out a lot of promotional items. They use our buckets for that purpose. You know, you asked a question earlier, how do people identify our buckets? If anyone, you go to those cooler fete parties, you know, the buckets that have the 5 beer or the 5 Smirnoff Ice in it with the branding, that's us. That's Omni. So yeah, sorry, I digressed a little bit.
Yeah, man. So I was gonna say, I figured that Q4 would have been your best quarter for the same reasons that you're mentioning here. But I mean, the numbers will tell the story, and we'll get to see, you know, context to what you're saying here. So I have just 2 more questions about the financial aspect. I did see, wasn't necessarily concerning, I'd say, but I just wanted your feedback on it in terms of your receivables. Now, I assume that as companies grow, their receivables will grow as well. So what would you say about the state of your receivables? Are there any concern? Is there any concern, and is it just maybe based on the type of clientele that you serve?
There are no concerns with our receivables at all. You know, with any receivable policy, the most important thing is client relationships. You know, you have to have dialogue with clients to understand if there is an issue as to why and how you can assist them to get out of it if that's necessary. You know, we do have a stringent credit policy that our credit manager, you know, who has 40 plus years experience in that industry, as a credit manager, you know, she manages that process tremendously well. So, you know, I say no, that we don't have an issue with our receivables.
Okay. So then, okay. So I guess it's just really. I mean, I do understand that part. So the next question that I had.
Just one quick thing, German. If you look at the breakdown of the receivables, you'll see that most of them are within the 30-day bucket. So, and the clients that only have our long-standing business-to-business clients that are really dependent on the products that they offer, and they've been successful in the industries that they are in. So most of the receivables are within the 30-day bucket. So there is no issue around the timing or the collection of those receivables.
And just from what I've seen, I mean, the average person wouldn't notice, but the larger the company, the more they're ordering from you, the longer credit terms they usually want. So
Right.
they're not going to pay you 100 or 50 million in 30 days. They're probably going to want 30 or 60, and it's upon delivery, and you know the 30 days start then. Just kind of
And just look at the industry that Omni is in terms of the industrial items that they supply. It's for large contracts. You rarely find contractors or entities paying all that sum all at once. So that would explain it.
Okay. All right. So next question I'll ask you, Patrick, in terms of your debt. How do you plan to manage your long-term debt? I know you'll probably say it's not a concern either, but what can we expect in terms of maybe the pay down of that debt?
Well, you know, there's always going to be a balance with the company in terms of equity versus debt. And I think there is room for both to be there. And in terms of manage it, you know, again, it's strong relationships with your vendors. You know, you have to ensure that you pay within your specific timeframes. You know, you want to make sure that you have a strategy to ensure positive cash flows. You know, my father has a sticker in his office that he looks at every day when he came to office. You know, he's no longer with us, but it simply said happiness is a positive cash flow. So, you know, you manage your cash flow properly, and you know the rest takes care of itself. But you know, basically sticking to policies and relationship building, you know, that's how we manage that.
Okay. And I see a questions here from Sean, and I'll put it in here because I think it's applicable. So you plan to pay dividends in the early stages, or are you focusing more on growth? So you mentioned in your dividend policy 25% of net profits. I've always thought it interesting whenever junior market companies plan to pay dividends so early, because really should be focused on growth. In my mind, the less you pay out, the less you have to borrow or further raise. So how do you strike that balance in terms of for your shareholders who want dividends, or you know, having enough capital?
Alex, you have an answer to that one, or?
Definitely. So I mean, and Jermaine, you won't put us in trouble, but ultimately the board would have to decide. The dividend policy is in the prospectus, where the company plans to spend up to 25% in distributable profits to pay dividends. But definitively, we are not able to say definitively what will happen, but it's up to the board to decide. But if we look historically at the company, we'll see where the company has been profitable. But ultimately, the board would decide on that.
Yeah, man, I don't get you in trouble. You know what I'm asking, really, and it's so Patrick, I'm hoping that you can just kind of tell me your mindset in terms of striking that balance, right? Because you are raising capital here now, right? So let's say you do 150 million, I think it was, you're paying out maybe 38, 40 million of that in dividends. And if you're paying that every year, how do you balance capital you need for machines or for further growth or expansion versus paying out that 30 to 40 million per year that you'd be paying in dividends? Like, is that, what would you, how do you strike that balance, or what goes into that consideration for you?
That's a difficult question to answer because you really have to look at the situation at any given time. So, yes, we're profitable, as you mentioned, and therefore I'm expecting that the company will be able to pay out dividends this year. But, to do it on to definitely say, it's really difficult to say, because if you balance it, one way or the other, obviously there are consequences to both. And we must always look at developing the company, investing in the company so that it can grow, so that the share value can grow. Even if there may arise, a situation where the company makes a decision not to pay out dividends or only pay out a portion of dividends, because remember we said up to 25%. I would expect shareholders to see value on their share price to increase if a decision like that is made.
Okay. All right. So I should warn you both. I'm a dividend investor, so I mean I expect dividends for any company that I'm investing in. But I like to ask a question. As if Philip is saying, he doesn't think paying dividends is a function of whether or not the company is on the junior or main market. This is a mature company, which is true. So if you pay dividend, then that's fine. So I do agree with Philip on that. But I like to ask a question, right? So the next set of questions for me are going to be mainly for you, Alex. So I watched the investor briefing yesterday that was held. Good to hear from the Omni team and so forth. How do you get to a fair value for a company like Omni, right? Because it's going to be now operating in that manufacturing sector. It's going to be compared to other companies that are listed. So, walk us through some of the considerations that an investor should have for a company such as Omni.
Well, I mean, ultimately for us at NCB Capital Markets, when we're doing our transactions, we normally do deep dive. So for our assessment of Omni, would have done a discounted cash flow. Now, given that some of the information that we have are not in the prospectus, I won't be able to go in detail as it relates to that. But for any typical investor, valuation is kind of simple. So normally, as you rightfully said, you would look at the industry that the company will operate in and see what the average price to earning ratio is. So Omni, we assume, will go into the manufacturing and distribution sector of the junior market. The last time, I think it was last Friday that we checked, the average for that sector was 20 times. So that's a good estimation of where Omni should truly be trading. Now, when we took the price to earnings ratio immediately after the IPO, so we assumed that the equity value of Omni will be 2.5 billion, and we calculated what the last 12 months earning would be. When we did that calculation, we came at a price to earning ratio for Omni at about 14.3 times. So if it is on the market for 14.3 times and its peers are trading at 20 times, then that would mean a 28% discount that investors would be buying in, just comparing it with its peers. And we think that that is very attractive. I mean, you have different valuation methods, but that would be one of the easier ones that investors could use. And then, Jermaine, as you say, you're a dividend man. So if you want to factor in a dividend and assume that Omni pays a dividend, you could do that as well. And the dividend yield for that would work out to 1.5 to 2%. When you add that 2% to the 28%, then you get a total return of 30% if it truly trades the share. So that would be a fair estimation of where the company is valued and potential upside in the near term. And then when we go on to the future in terms of the use of the proceeds, if it is to truly recognize the increase in its revenues, then that appreciation is expected to increase.
Okay. So what would you say would be the ideal investor, right? If this maybe is my first investment, how do I know if this IPO is for me or not? What are some of the things that I should be looking at? Because you mentioned some words. I may not know what PE means. I may
Yeah.
not know what all of those terms mean. How do I decide if this is the right IPO for me?
So, I mean, firstly, the first thing you need to do is understand what is on the table. So that means reading through the prospectus in detail. If it is that you need assistance in understanding some of the things in the prospectus, always reach out to your financial advisor. So that's the first thing, understanding the company that you're going into, understand what the market is like, and speak to your financial advisor. What I'd say also is that every investor needs a balanced portfolio. So you ask what type of investor is this suited for. I'd say any investor who needs a growth stock in their portfolio, this stock would be ideal for that investor. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a retail or an institutional investor. Any investor that needs a balanced portfolio and they don't have a growth stock or they need more of a growth stock in a manufacturing sector, I think this would be a perfect fit for that investor.
All right. So we also have Jason from the NCB team, who I think could add some value here. So Jason, we're going to bring you on. I believe you may want to add something to what Alex was saying just now in terms of what makes or what an investor should look for in terms of Omni and what may make it an attractive investment.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So going through the valuation and what Alex was touching on, it's really both an art and a science, and we had to really get to know what Omni is as a company, as well as their plans to figure out, okay, we're taking this to market and persons will hold it in the future. What do we expect that future value to look like? Now, on the side of it being an attractive investment, there are a couple of stuff. Alex already touched on the discount to market peers. So if you're coming in at just over 14 times, market peers trade at 20 times, that's a 28% discount. And that's before you factor in dividends. And we know you like dividends, Jermaine. So that's one thing, you have an upside. Another thing is talking about the fact that Omni's leverage, meaning how much debt it had, has been coming down over the past 5 years. So if you're buying into a company with less and less debt, it means more and more of that value belongs to the owners of the company. It's not that you owe that value to anybody else. So that's another selling point. The third one, and the one that I like the most, is that interest rates have since recently been a lot higher than they have been in the past decade. With interest rates high, then you have high discount rates, and a discount rate is part of how you value a company. So if you discount something more, it's going to be cheaper. And you as an investor buying into the IPO are buying in cheaper. That's number one. Number two is that the Bank of Jamaica has been posturing that rates may come down in the near future. If you have rates going down in the fixed income markets, you expect to see a rebound in the equities market, like the Jamaica Stock Exchange. So if you're an investor and you have an opportunity to buy at a discount right now, and then you're expecting the markets to go up, some of that value is going to be unlocked and it's going to be transferred. I would ask myself the question, if I have the opportunity to make myself wealthy, why not take it?
All right. So I do agree somewhat with a lot of what you're saying there, Jason, because I do think that, I mean, all companies, not just Omni, would stand to benefit from the return of what we were seeing, 2018, 2019, and so on. So the lowering of interest rates would do that. But Alex, I think you wanted to add something else as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more point in that, just not only looking at the numbers for Omni, but just looking at the leadership team of the company, because I think that is very important as well. When you go through the board of directors and the management team, just look at the number of years of experience that they have, and they are basically experts in their area. They would have been running this company for how many years, and they've been doing an excellent job at it. So I think just outside of the numbers, but just looking at the growth of the company and what you expect to happen in the future, I think looking at the leadership team is a very good place to look in terms of what would the leadership of this company be going forward. I think stockholders or shareholders should look at that when they're investing in a company as well.
And I agree there as well, because if this was a new company, trying a new product, trying a new market, there'd be a lot more questions. But the fact that I'd like to still say that the company is older than I am, because I'm only 40 years old, so that's very good to see. So you've been around longer than most of us who are probably watching this call have been alive, right? So as in the company, so that bodes well to understand that the company is still expected to be there once there's demand for the products that you're offering. So that's certainly something to know, because again, we may see maybe junior market companies typically would be in operation for a few years, get a certain growth, and then list. You're not at that stage. You're well past the teething pains of a new company. And so I agree with that perspective as well. So I wanted to ask the NCB team, are you expecting, so based on the size of the offer, are you expecting more retail or institutional investors to be interested in Omni?
So, I mean, historically, what we have seen for junior market listings, we mainly see retail investors. We have been getting interest from a lot of institutional clients as well. I would say, even though historically mainly retail investors invest in junior market IPOs, I wouldn't say institutional investors shouldn't invest as well, because as I said before, it's a growth stock in the manufacturing sector. And I think any investment portfolio that is lacking, whether it be a retail or an institutional investor, I think it's a good buy for their portfolio.
Okay. Anything to add, Jason?
Right. And furthermore, we see that Omni is both a mature company and one poised for growth. So that's a really unique value proposition. Usually a growth company, they're saying, we have great potential, but we might not have a lot right now. And then a mature company, and I think you alluded to it earlier, you might be at that stage where your growth is kind of plateauing. There's not much more that you can do without really changing your strategy. Omni is at that sweet spot where it's both mature and it has a lot of potential to get even bigger. So persons investing for the long term, they have something to gain. Persons who want some growth really soon, Patrick said it's a process, and that's true, but we have a clearly articulated strategy as to how that growth will happen. That's there for those investors as well. So many different persons with many different goals can find value in buying into Omni.
Okay. So there was a question that came up when we were doing the prospectus review that I wanted to clarify here. Now, I made an assumption during the prospectus review, so I'll tell you what I said, and you can, clarify my assumption, and then you can address it as well. So the question was, why is NCB selling their shares only to essentially buy back through the lead broker pool? What I said, or my assumption is that pool, well, one, when you carry a company through the private equity stage, you want to be able to extract some value, since you'd have been there a year or two or maybe more. And then that lead broker pool would mainly be now for NCB capital market, maybe clients, maybe have your clients who you want to say, hey, take advantage of this opportunity where you don't have to necessarily compete in the general pool for it. It's here for you. So tell me if I was wrong, because I don't want to speak on behalf of NCB. I don't work there. But let me know what that is, because I'm sure persons are curious as to why are you selling but then also buying.
Yeah, so a part of what you said was correct. So NCB is a financial ecosystem. So we have a lot of different investment portfolios. Some of our investment portfolios look for private equity transactions, similarly to Omni, that are in very good industry. The company is doing well, and we see good growth prospect for them. So those private equity portfolios that we have, they would invest in those companies and get them ready for listing, similarly to Omni, and then they'll exit and look for, not exit, but reduce their exposure and look for a similar company like Omni to invest in at the private equity level. And then for the lead broker reserve pool, it's also reserved for NCB. We have also other portfolios that particularly can't invest at a private equity level, but can invest at the IPO level. So this is where we see those portfolios coming in. And to the potential investors, I'd say that this really shows that NCB is doubling down in terms of we would have been with Omni at the private equity level, and we're showing to the investing public that, hey, we're also going with them at the IPO level. So at both points, NCB is sticking by Omni because we truly believe in this company.
And it's a case where you can't just say, hey, NCB Capital Markets, let me just transfer this to a pension fund. It's not something that you can do like that. So that's why you have to do it the way that you're doing it.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Anything else to add to that? Okay. All right. So let me ask you in terms of, so there was a mention, I think Angus alluded to it when I heard him discuss it on Kalila's program, this idea that NCB Capital Markets is a regional company, and then of course Omni has regional aspirations. So it was alluded to a little bit earlier in this conversation, but I wanted to just understand more of, well, one, how soon can we say a materialization of those expansion plans outside the territory, and what specifically NCB may be doing to aid Omni in getting to those goals?
So I think Omni has started already. It has started exporting to Panama and other Caribbean territories. Patrick can tell in terms of the timeline for the other territories. So, they have Costa Rica, Guyana, and Trinidad and Barbados to export to as well. So, I mean, they've started already. NCB Capital Markets, we are their partners, and we have regional reach. So if it is that our expertise are needed at any point in time, we are always here to assist, whether it be for an acquisition or going into another territory or improving the capital base or arranging a transaction for them. We're always there. But I think for now, what we really want to focus on is the IPO and not get too lost in terms of those type of expansions. But I mean, they have started already.
Okay, well, you take those on the quarterly, right?
Right.
All right, so we do have some questions from our audience here, but I do know there's a member of the NCB team to go through the process of how to apply, because we've had a couple of those questions come up. So I'll invite Kimberly, once I see her camera on, to join us. And I do have one more question here for your NCB team before I bring on Kimberly that I wanted to ask. So there's some, what I noticed was that you have an APO out now, NCB. You have this offer, and I feel like there's just maybe one more around the corner, who knows. How do you think that impacts the potential to raise capital for Omni? Are you concerned at all? What are your thoughts on that?
So, sorry. So no, we're not concerned. We would have done our due diligence for both transactions, and we know what the interest is like for both. Remember, we always have to go back to our investment portfolios. NCB is a different company from Omni in terms of the industry that they operate in terms of the revenue level, in terms of which market, in terms of the Jamaica Stock Exchange. One is on the main market, one is on the junior market. So they serve different purpose in different persons' portfolio. And we, based on our research, we haven't found any issue for two of them to commingle in the space. And as Angus said, NCB is here to bring back the capital markets. The year we're in 5 months, the 5th month of the year, and we have an APO out, and we also have an IPO out, and we hope to have more within this year. So it's just a part of bringing back the capital markets. Between 2017 and 2019, we had on average about 9 IPOs per year. And then between 2020 and 2022, we had about 4. And then I think in 2023, we had 1. So I think it is time to bring back the market. And how you do that is by bringing very strong company in diversified industries. And I think those 2 equity capital market transactions is just an example of NCB doing that.
Okay. I thought you were just saying that you don't think, you know, between the 5 billion and the 500 million, it's not a lot of money, so you can, you know, get that quite easily. So I'm not gonna say that. I just, you know. All right, so let's invite Kimberly to join us. We do have some questions. I want to get to them, but Kimberly, welcome. So I think I'm supposed to share my screen, but yes, give us some guidance first. I'll share my screen to go through.
Okay, so good afternoon, Jermaine. Good afternoon to your viewers. I just wanted to start by saying that we are very excited here at NCB Capital Markets to be partnering with Omni on this transaction. We think that they fit in very, very well with our wealth creation philosophy. This is something that we discuss in great detail with our clients. Some of the ways that you can put yourself in a position to create wealth. And one of those tenets is by looking at investing in companies that are poised for growth, are in long-term industries, and that you can hold and be comfortable holding for a long time. So I just wanted to preface by saying, you know, we're very excited to be a part of this transaction. That being said, I wanted to touch on also how you can participate in this particular transaction. So, of course, you would have listened to all of this information this evening about the financials, about the growth prospects, all the, you know, just the details about the company, which is very important to go through that rigor when you are thinking about doing an investment. So having heard this, hopefully having spoken to your financial advisor as well, perhaps after all of that deliberation, you decide, okay, I want to participate in this offer. You can do so by visiting our website at goipo.jncb.com. And there are just a few simple steps that you would have to go through in order to participate. So when you go to Go IPO, before you even get to this screen, you would select Jamaica. It would carry you to Jamaica. Then you would click on IPOs, APOs, and it will take you to this page here where you will see the Omni transaction as a part of the lineup. Right, you would go ahead and click on it. You can get some further information about the company. You can look at the prospectus. It does have a small summary there at the top of some of the key metrics. So the opening date, closing date, those types of things. It also shows you the various pools. So you would look through that area and determine which pool you will make your application through, and then click apply now. So assuming you go into the general pool, you could do this in two avenues. If you are a client of NCB Capital Markets, then you can log in with your NCB login. If you are a client of another broker, then you would go to all other investors. So this part is fairly simple. You would have to go through and enter just some basic details. So your name, email address, telephone number. Yes, you would see the Go IPO terms and conditions there as well. It will ask you how many shares you're interested in purchasing. You'll get an estimate of what that will cost when you include the fees. Right. Jermaine is helping me out here. And then you would fill in some information. So standard things, name, address, telephone number. The important thing to note here is that you, as long as you have an account, a brokerage account with any of the registered brokers, you can participate in this transaction. Of course, we would want you to be a client of NCB Capital Markets, but if you're not excluded. You can still participate by using your broker number, your JCST number with your broker. You would put in all of that information. It would validate it. If it is that you have a joint holder on your account, your joint holder would be required to sign as well. Once you've gone through all of that now, it would be time to fund your account. So there are several ways in which you can fund the account. If you are a client of NCB Capital Markets, you can fund from your NCB Capital Markets account or your NCBJ, that's your bank account. Either one of those would be accepted. If you are applying from through another broker, you can do an RTGS transfer to us here at NCB Capital Markets to settle the purchase, or you can arrange with your broker to settle it on your behalf. So it's a fairly quick and easy process. You should be able to do this in 5 minutes if you have all of the information. So, your TRN, your address, your JCSD number, if you have all of that information handy, and before you know it, you would have made your application for this particular transaction. So we just wanted to run through those details with you so that you're comfortable and you understand. And if you do in fact want to participate, this is the way to do so. So that I know that was a mouthful.
No, man, that was a very clear explanation. I think I should have you do some tutorial videos for me. Explanation. So there is, I say, Shellyan asking how would a non-NCB customer pay. I think you kind of explained that part, but just kind of go through it again.
I'm happy to go over it. So once you've completed your application, there is an option where you can select how you want to pay. So if you are not an NCB client, then you would be presented by two options. You could go ahead and do an electronic transfer on your own, or you could fund through your broker. If you choose to do the electronic transfer on your own, you can find all of the account details in the prospectus. It's in the appendix at the back of the prospectus. It has all of the details that you'd be required to put in order to make that transfer. And of course, the other option would be to pay through your broker. So of course, you'd have to notify your broker that you've made this application and request for them to make this payment on your behalf. There we are. Really helping me out tonight, Jermaine.
All right, so I think the other question would be, so I think the part that some persons may be concerned about is once they do the transfer, let's say that they do the transfer, they make the payment, they would simply just need to take maybe a screenshot of that payout or enter those details. Is that the case?
Yes, we would definitely recommend that. So at least you would have a copy of the reference number. Even before you fund the account, you do get a reference number from the subscription that you have made. So it would be good to make a note of that number as well. As much information as possible when we're searching is always helpful. But even without all of that, if you do reach out to us, the team is ready and willing, able to assist you in any way we can. But you want to arm yourself with as much information as possible. So I would encourage you to take down those reference numbers.
Okay, and I do have one more question. What would be the difference here between a JCSD number and a broker account number?
Certainly. So when you visit a broker, invariably they would have an internal system in which your account is opened, and you would be issued an account number for your overarching investment account from that broker. The JCSD number, however, is specific to the Jamaica Central Securities Depository. That is the body that oversees all of this trading of shares here in Jamaica. So once you've opened a stock brokerage account with a licensed broker, they would then open a JCSD account for you as well to house your shares. So two separate numbers. The broker account number is the unique reference that your broker has for you, and your JCSD account number now is the actual account in which your shares are held with the registrar.
So they'd likely see that broker account number on their account
On your
statement.
statement, yes. And if you're not sure, I would just reach out to your financial advisor and verify both numbers actually. Let them give you the broker account number, let them tell you what the JCSD number is as well. Because oftentimes if you're not so sure, you may enter the wrong thing and you may run into an error when you're doing your application. So always a good idea to reach out to your financial advisor and make sure you have all of that information straightened out before you make your application.
Okay, awesome. All right, so let's get to some questions. We do have, thank you for that, Kimberly. As I said, I'm going to reach out to you. We have some tutorials that we wanted to do for a long time now. I'm just going to have you do it for us. So the first question here, O'Neill, is NCB Capital Markets an exclusive selling agent?
Yes, we are the lead broker and arranger, the only selling agent. But as Kimberly rightfully mentioned, if you have a different brokerage account, you can still apply as well by clicking all other investors.
Okay. All right. So the next question is, I think this may be for Patrick. Have you experienced lengthy downtime with your machines? And if that happens, how does the company manage such situations?
The simple question to that is no, we haven't managed lengthy downtimes. And, I could extrapolate that a little bit further. We may have 3 or 4 machines that can produce the same capacity, that can produce the same or a similar size tooling. So say, for example, we're manufacturing a beverage crate for dairy industries, a milk crate. We have 3 machines that can run that milk crate without any issues. So if one machine is down, we have capacity and time on the other 2 that we can put the mold in that machine and run it. So downtime is negligible. And of course, we have a fantastic set of maintenance staff that are here on compound 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to ensure that the machines are up and running and our products are of high quality for our customers.
Okay, I think the downtime question could just be related to their companies in the healthcare space that we cover, and sometimes those machines are subject to downtime. So I think maybe our audience is just probably used to having to answer those or ask those questions rather. All right, so I think we took this question from Omar already. We spoke about projections. So Omar, if you have any further question relating to that response, just let me know. Omar is asking what would be the timeline to receive the machines and the timeline for those machines to be operating at full capacity. So Patrick, you answered that before. So I think the part that we may want to answer here is the operating at full capacity part. You mentioned there would be a timeline in terms of for procurement, setting up, etc. So what would be, once you receive the machines, what would that look like in terms of them being at full capacity?
Okay, once the machines are received, it'll probably take about 2 weeks for us to install them and to commission them. And once that commission process is over, we are at full guns capacity, running right away.
Okay, awesome. All right. Sean was asking, can you ask about what the broker number is? I think we answered that already, Sean. Let us know if you're clear. Trevon is saying, it's a testament to Omni's management of receivables. I believe that's related to our receivables question. So I think we're good there. Sean is asking if you plan to pay dividends in the early stages, or are you putting more focus on growth? I think we addressed the dividend question in its entirety already. Okay, so let me scroll down to see if there are new questions. Okay, so Philip is asking, do you have your eyes on any potential acquisitions at the moment? Thank you, Philip. I wanted to ask this as well and I forgot. So what are the plans for inorganic growth, specifically acquisitions?
We have nothing on the horizon in terms of acquisitions as yet. We're always looking for opportunities, and we'll never turn down a good opportunity, But at this point in time, no, we have no acquisition plans.
Okay, so further to that, I'll ask: do you find maybe, I guess, the type of industry you're in, maybe the size of the other players may be so large? Is it that acquisition would require maybe a large amount of capital, or is it? I mean, this is just my curiosity here, but I don't necessarily see quote unquote small players in this space, right? You're gonna have to have a decent size to be able to serve this market well.
That is certainly true to an extent, but then you also have to consider, what space are we referring to? Omni is the only manufacturer in Jamaica who does industrial packaging like crates and buckets. So who are we going to buy? We're the only one.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. All right, so Philip is saying if you need to consider raising equity in the future, please consider a rights issue and not only an APO. Your existing shareholders at the time deserve that consideration. I'm sure Alex will say we're nowhere near those type of conversations right now.
Yeah, right now we're just focusing strictly on the IPO, getting this cash, giving it to Omni, letting them improve their productive capacity, and then we'll discuss that down the road.
Okay. All right. Chev, I think we cleared this up already. Can we expect other selling agents? Kimberly has said that you don't need to have an NCB Capital Markets account to apply, so you can apply with any brokerage account that you have.
I also wanted to make the point, Jermaine, that on that same Go IPO platform, if you do not have a stock brokerage account, you can start the process of opening an account directly on the platform as well. So I know that your viewers are very savvy and are part of the investing community, but just in case we have anyone online who is not so au fait with how the process works, you can actually start the process of opening an account right there on the Go IPO platform.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. Sean is asking, is Omni being affected by current supply chain issues going on in the wider markets?
Sean, that's a very good question. And the answer to that is yes, we're impacted, but no, we're not affected. And I would like to clarify that distinction. We source materials from the North American market, the Central American region, the Caribbean region, South American region, Europe, and Asia. So if there's ever an incident where, for whatever geopolitical reason or some environmental disaster, that one region is impacted, we have partners in other regions that we can lean on and get products from. So, we're not affected, but we're certainly impacted because, of course, everybody has read and heard how the Panama Canal is in a drought situation, and therefore shipping vessels can't move as quickly through the canal from Asia to this Caribbean region as effectively as they could. So we do have delays in shipment, but again, it's affected us because you may have a delay of a shipment of 2 weeks, but there's no impact because we also have partners who are supplying us from other regions that have no shipping delays. So that was just a brief.
And I believe I saw a fair amount of inventory on your balance sheet, so it seems like you're pretty stocked out for a while as well. Daniel is saying he saw 2 Omni buckets on a farm yesterday and he was very impressed with the quality. And he's now led to ask if the company makes buckets for the construction industry. I believe that answer is yes. We would have covered that before. So kudos to the team there. Natoya is asking, how long do we have to wait to be refunded? Should we not get all the shares applied for?
Yeah, so typically up to 10 days after the offer closes. So it should be a very quick process, given that it's online as well.
Okay. All right. And I believe we covered all of those already. Let me see. Okay, so the question here from Devon: who are the persons that fall into the key shareholders reserved pool, and why is that pool so exceptionally large? I think the exceptional comes from, I guess, the size compared to the general public.
Yeah, so within the key partners, it's usually businesses that Omni does business with. Also, it's consultants, professionals who offer professional services to the company. In terms of the size compared to the general pool, so when we're looking at the offer was so attractive, and based on the demand that Omni has received from its business to business clientele, it was so overwhelming that the key partners pool resulted in the key partners pool being that large. I'd say though that don't let that be a deterrence to you. I'd still apply and apply early if it is that I'm interested in the offer.
Okay, so is it going to be, I don't remember if I read this, but is it like a first come, first serve kind of thing where the earlier the application, the better?
Yes, so if it is that the offer is fully subscribed for, and say we get the 500 million flat, then it's first come, first serve. But if it's oversubscribed, then it's at our discretion with the company to decide how the allocation would go. And I mean, from previous IPOs, you would see some examples of that where they give you a flat amount and they prorate the remainder. But I
Okay.
can't say exactly what will happen in this instance.
I do have my projections, so I'll see if I'm right in a few weeks. Chris is saying, what's your approach in terms of the company's responsibility to now provide public reports versus being used to just having to worry about the numbers internally and not worried about JC deadlines? So this is for you, Patrick. I guess he's asking, I'll add some more context to this. So there's usually an adjustment, and I know you'd have been trained by NCB and so forth, but it's gonna be a new a new expectation, new rhythm in terms of reporting, and you'll have investors who are expecting openness, transparency, on-time reports. They'll be expecting everything that has been promised in terms of prospectus. How do you wrap your mind around that?
Well, simply, we at Omni have always looked after our stakeholders, whether they're internally or externally. And we are high believers on integrity and transparency. And of course, the JSC has certain regulatory requirements that have to be met. And Omni is not in the habit of being in breach of any regulatory requirements. So in terms of responsibility to providing information to the public, absolutely, we'll be doing it as required.
Okay. All right. And a final question that I see here, a gold digital marketing and web services is saying, present a pitch or a case to a foreign investor who is concerned about the devaluation of the dollar relative to the growth of the company. And that may be for you, Alex. That seems like a very targeted question.
Yes, so historically, when we look at the dollar over the last 10 years or so, we see that it would have devalued. That's the Jamaican dollar relative to the US dollar. The devaluation averaged about 5% per year on average. What we're seeing for Omni based on their growth plan, their growth historical, let me compare it historical. Historically, Omni would have been growing at a compounded annual growth rate of 6%. So, I mean, that's above the inflation rate. So, when we look towards the future, the use of the proceeds and the projection of a 10% year-over-year growth, if it is that history is any indication of the future, then we anticipate that the value of Omni would improve or increase over the level at which the dollar devalues. And also, just to remember, Omni is coming to market at 14 times, which is about 28% discount to the market. So, I mean, if you're comparing a devaluation of 5% to 28% in terms of growth potential, then I think within the first year, that's a winner for me.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. And just to jump in here, You may be referring to the growth of the company in terms of the growth of the price on the stock market, or you mean the growth year-on-year revenue, which, you know, Omni is targeting 10% in the short term. In either case, there are two things I'd like to add. One is that the dollar has been a lot stable than it has been recently. And two, we see where the Bank of Jamaica has historically kept interest rates locally above its policy rate, locally above the policy rate in the United States. So this incentivizes Jamaican dollars to stay within Jamaica instead of bringing in these US inflows, spending all of this Jamaican dollars to make the exchange rate slide. Based on what has been happening recently, seeing that stabilize and seeing that interest rate regime being continued, then we wouldn't be nearly as concerned about a devaluation in the Jamaican dollar right now compared to how it would have been in the past. So that's not something that we're looking at. We're more looking at the fact that Omni is on its track to grow, that it has its strategy articulated, and then with this injection, they'd have that oxygen to make it happen.
Okay. All right. So I see two more questions here. Let's try and get them in. I'm trying to close out this interview in 4 minutes, so let's try to do that. It is anticipated that the junior market cap will be increased by the GOJ soon, possibly this FY. How soon before an IPO will be done to raise more funds? Very specific question for you.
We've been getting this question a lot, but I just want to double down by saying we're strictly focusing on the IPO. We have no talks about the IPO at this point in time because the proceeds from the IPO is sufficient for Omni to expand. Yes, the GOJ would have announced that there's an intention to increase the junior market cap. The reality is that we don't have a definitive date as to when that will happen. It has to go through Parliament. The JSC would have to do some re-releases as well. So we can't definitively speak towards that. But what I'll say is that the IPO proceeds is sufficient for Omni to do whatever expansion it is that they need and to go into the different product categories and different sectors.
Okay. Thank you. And final question here that seems to be for Patrick. Forgive my ignorance, Sean says, on plastic making, but I must ask, does the plastic you make have an expiration date? And if yes, what happens after that expiration date?
You know, I'm not a plastic engineer, so I can't speak to the expiration date. I do believe it doesn't begin to break down until maybe after 50 plus years. But, you know, one of the good things about Omni is that we have a recycling program where we take back damaged products from the marketplace and we recycle those and put them into new product lines, or to new products, I should say, that, you know, go back out into the marketplace. So we really have a circular economy, micro economy within Omni and our customer base.
Okay. All right. I see more questions coming in, so I'll do this. I'll take a final call for questions. Any questions posed at 30 seconds after I make the statement, we'll just send to the team afterwards. But if you have any final questions, please post them now and we'll try to get to them. But I'm seeing two more here, so I'm going to ask them very quickly, and then let's wrap up from there. So this Gold Digital Marketing says, I may have missed it, but how is Omni going to compete in the retail space considering its competitors? What is your competitive advantage?
All right. Well, Omni does not compete in retail. We are strictly business to business. And, you know, you're asking about what separates us from our competitors. I answered that earlier by saying the quality of our service does by you know, means and bounds. But we are not a retail company. We are strictly business to business.
Okay. All right. And one for you, Alex. Does NCB have any intentions at the moment or in the future to buy back into Omni?
So, I mean, Omni is a very attractive company. After the IPO, the shares will be publicly listed. So any investor can purchase and sell the shares.
And just to add here, Jermaine, we have the lead broker reserve pool. So it is very public that NCB believes in this company, and we have that allocation of shares to act out on that belief. But that's not referring to anything after the IPO, just making that distinction.
All right, understood. So I'll give you first, Alex, the opportunity to say any closing remarks, and then we'll close off with you, Patrick, for any final words you may want to say to potential investors. So Alex, you can go, and then I'm not sure, Jason, if you wanted to say anything as well. If you want to, you can go after Alex. All right.
All right. So thanks, Jermaine. Thank you for having us on your program. I hope that after this program, your viewers learn, grow, and also invest. It was a very interesting program, and I enjoyed it. I think for Omni, as we would have discussed earlier today, it's a very strong company. Just looking at it historically and the plans that they have, we believe that it's a very attractive offer when you compare it to where its peers are trading. We believe that it's a good fit in any investment portfolio if you're looking to diversify and also to purchase a stock that has very good growth prospect. I'll just remind the viewers to read the prospectus, speak to your financial advisor. The offer opens tomorrow. The offer also closes the 31st of May. Go IPO platform is the platform that you should go to apply for the shares. And it doesn't matter whether or not you have an NCB Cap Markets account. If you have an account with another broker, you can still apply through our Go IPO platform. Thank you again, Jermaine.
All right, cool. Thank you. And I'll just add, watch our prospectus review. That's a good place to do your research as well. All right, Jason, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, thanks again, Jermaine. Thanks again, Patrick. Thanks again, everybody watching. All I'll say to you is this. We have a company that's mature and has a lot of prospects for growth. It's coming to market at a discount to its peers. So yes, of course, review the prospectus, speak to your financial advisor. But you want to make a decision that makes you wealthy, because you at least owe it to yourself to do that research and give yourself the chance.
All right, thank you so much, Jason. All right, Patrick, so I'll give you the final words. Anything that you'd want to say? Maybe I failed to ask that you wanted to add, and floor is open to you.
The big question that people may be looking at outside of Omni's financial performance is, why Omni? But I can tell you why invest in Omni. We are in every household in Jamaica, be it through our PVC pipes that carries water to your faucets, or the basic laundry tub that you have in your washroom. We are 100% Jamaican company. We believe strongly in looking after our stakeholders, as I mentioned earlier, both internally and externally. We are a highly resilient company. We've been around for 50 years. We have survived events like FinSac. We survived a fire in 2013 that decimated an 80,000 square foot warehouse facility. We survived COVID. And throughout each of these three major events, we have come out stronger and a better company. So, investing in Omni, you're not only investing in a company, you're investing in part of Jamaica's future development, because the majority of homes and infrastructure, roads that are taking place, Omni is going to be in the foundation for sure.
All right, thank you so much, Patrick. So I do want to wish you all the best. I hope to. Well, I know I'll see you at the listing ceremony. So congratulations in advance, and all the best to you and your team.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
All right. Okay, so I'll just do a recap, just in case there's somebody joining that is not really familiar with the pertinent dates of the offer. So the opening date is tomorrow, that's May 17th. So you can apply if you're interested to do so at Go go ipo.jncb.com. If you watched previously in this video, we went through the application process. You don't need an NCB Capital Markets account to apply. You just need your broker account number and your JCSD number, right? So your brokerage, your advisor should be able to help you with that information. Minimum subscription is 1,000 units. And of course, you pay a fee of $172.50. Basis of allotment is usually announced 10 days after the closing date. So let's say it closes on Friday, which is tomorrow. 10 days after that, we'll see the basis of allotment. I expect it to possibly be even sooner based on the fact that everything is digital now. It's usually on time there. If there are any refunds to be processed, you'll get that shortly after as well. And then the listing of shares will come at a later date, right? The company is issuing 500 million new shares, well, 250 million new shares, 250 from selling shareholders. So the total offer to the market is 500 million shares. These are the pools. So reserved pool for key partners, lead broker pool, employee pool, and then there's the general public, which is 120 million shares. So we went through the full prospectus, well, the main points anyway in our prospectus review, so be sure to check out that video. It answers all the questions you would have for the prospectus. And then of course, we'd have gone through the interview here tonight to answer all the questions that we had coming out of that review and questions that you would have submitted. So if you have any questions at all, post them in the comments on any platform you're watching, and then we'll just send that off to the team or the NCB team, the Omni team or the NCB team. It really doesn't matter. So I'll ask you, to do that if you need to do so. Thanks to everybody who has tuned in. I think we had as much as 193 persons on. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Take a moment, please, to like the video. Since you would have been here all this time, I would assume that you got some value out of this conversation. So please like the video. It helps us to grow. And I will say, if you're not familiar with investing, like you're not sure how to get started, we have an investing for beginners video on our channel. We have a dividend guide to investing. We have a video on how to pick stocks. We've done many prospectus reviews over the last 4 years. So you are now on a platform that provides you with everything that you need to learn how to invest. So I want to thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the very next video.